First of all, congratulations on Depravity. It was such a great watch. I was caught off guard by a lot of the movie. As a composer, how do you begin to tackle a project like this? Did you get the script and work off of a script, or were you able to actually see some of the action in order to create the soundtrack?
Yeah, on this particular movie, I actually received the script about 8 years ago,
Wow.
long before it was moved. Paul and I, we knew each other. Paul, the director, Paul Tamassi, we knew each other, way back then. And he's like, look, I have this script. I want to, take a look at it. And I took a look at it, loved it, and it was from there. It was years ago that we started talking about it, and of course, when it finally came to fruition. Um, we delved a lot deeper into it, talking about specific nuances and how the film would tie together. And yeah, obviously, without giving anything away, there's a lot of I didn't see that coming moments in it. But of course, when you approach the scoring, you do know what's coming. So I think one of the things is to make sure that during that process, you don't give in to temptation of giving any leads or any hints of what's about to happen. You let the film take that course by itself.
Definitely. And having the script for 8 years, you evolve as a person, your musical experience evolves. How does the sound of this script change throughout the years?
Do you know, it didn't really. The very early conversations. I mean, look, Paul actually wrote the script 20 years ago. And it took him that long to, because he's a writer, he's a producer, um, and he wanted to, use this particular film specifically to have his directorial debut. And so he stayed true to his word. He got a lot of experience in the industry, and finally, by the time that the right producing partners came along to give him his shot, he was very very well prepared. So right from the very beginning, we had very similar conversations. He knew what pieces of music he wanted to reference. He knew the more than the specific pieces, though. He knew the emotion that he wanted to capture. And that was really the drive of the conversation that we were having. But there's some of the songs that were in there that music supervisor, Katie Garibaldi, worked really hard to make sure, like, he wanted these songs in there from 20 years ago, and she had to go back and get the licenses and put them in. So he knew what he wanted right from the beginning.
That's quite awesome. Does the casting ever affect the way you compose a scene? Because this soundtrack seems to kind of go with the characters as well as the emotion that the scene is going through.
Well, that's a great observation, because yes, that was a very deliberate attempt. I'm a big theme person. Paul is, he understands and loves the themes, and that was part of his direction for it. Um, and I think that we didn't really come up with the themes years ago. We came up with the mood, the feeling, the tension, the suspense, the twisted nature of the music. That kind of sound was things that we had early talks about. I withheld from writing the actual specific themes until I knew who was playing which roles and saw them in their roles. And instead of like just doing a computer mock-up of what the sounds would be like, I went off to the piano. I worked out the themes. I recorded them on the iPhone. I texted them over to Paul, and he listened to them, and he's just like, "Yep, spot on. They exactly capture each of those characters." And again, with this type of a film, it's more of a suspense thriller horror rather than just like an in-your-face horror kind of film. So I didn't, we had to really be very delicate with using the themes for the characters, because it didn't have to. It's not one of those ones that's in your face. It's
Mhm.
not that type of horror film. It's one of the ones that's very subtle, and so I had to blend those themes into the sound of the suspense as well.
Definitely. And you talked a little bit about the fact that there's a lot of twists and turns in this. Not only is there a lot of twists and turns, but it seems like scenes kind of flip in the middle of them. How difficult is it to compose something when you can't give away that something is coming?
Um, Jump into the role of the character. When they don't know what's coming, I have to be them. And again, that's a great conversation that I had with Paul as we're going through it, is to say, what perspective, whose perspective are we giving? The perspective of, this character, that character, and even the building itself is a character in the film. So that had, even the building had its own theme as well. So, who's the one that's in control right now? Whose perspective do you want the audience to see? So, and then I jump into them, and right up until that moment happens, I'm almost like an actor myself and a musical actor, to have to say, I don't know what's about to happen. And musically, you just have to treat it that way.
That's awesome. You have a few amazing project that you worked on. How different is this project from anything you've done in the past?
Um, it's unique. Yeah, it's unique in the sense that I think that a lot of the other projects that I've worked on were either very, we talked about themes, and I love melody, I love themes and building them, and giving people, who watch a film, maybe a little melody that might stick in their head afterwards, and they go out the theater humming it. This one doesn't have all that, fantastical magic melodies and space for that. So again, the approach for that was very different, and it was a lot of I don't want to call it soundscaping, because I wasn't recreating the sounds, but I was creating the sound of the tension, the sound of the movement, of just scene by scene. Um, so from that sense, there was a difference. A slightly different approach to it than maybe some of the other things like The King's Daughter, which has a little bit of period music and some fantasy and some tension and darkness. This one was very twisted.
Definitely was. And another thing that caught my attention was as a composer, how closely do you work with the sound engineer to incorporate the sounds of the building into the music and help propel the intensity in that manner?
I think that those kind of discussions happen right before I actually get onto scoring. So you have what's called a spotting session, where you sit down with the director and other key team players, and you work out what's going to be the predominant sounds where. And in some cases, there's certain points where they say, okay, we'll give that over to the music, and the music's going to take care of that sound, or that, because I really don't want to clash with what's going on with anybody else, and especially when you get into the sound mix, if you want the music to be in its place and not constantly going up and down in volume, you've got to make sure you stay out of the way of those other sounds. So it was very meticulously pre-planned.
That's awesome. How fun is it to do a project like this as opposed to something more magical or more of a time period piece?
I love it. I mean, it is different. But again, it challenges you. You got to sink into a little bit of a darker or deeper place. And it was funny. We actually didn't have a huge amount of time to score this film. We started, and I think initially we only had like 3 weeks to do the score, and the time did extend a little bit beyond that. But so I had my team as I mentioned, Katie Garibaldi was the music supervisor. She was also the score coordinator. So I employed her to go and get all the timings and tempos of each of the beats, and whenever anything happened, whenever a door closes, whenever somebody puts a glass down, I love to get those timings, be really specific, because I score to the tempo of the film. I don't do it just there's a nice piece of music to go behind. It's really, the music's married with it. And what was really enjoyable is just like, she's in the other room getting all the timings down, and and then all of a sudden, she actually hadn't seen the film until it was coming to do that. So she was watching it in frame by frame. That's in some points just moving one frame forward, and all of a sudden I just hear this, oh no. And I'm like, what's going on? It's a computer crashed or something? She's like, no, I just seen what's happened in the film, and even she didn't see it coming, and even in slow motion, those little shocks were there. So it was enjoyable seeing somebody just go through it, even at a very different way of watching it, and still get the emotional experience.
Watching it while composing, is that any different from when you watch the final product and do you still keep on checking to see that and make sure that your composition fits, or do you just sit back and relax and just enjoy the movie for what it is?
I always start off trying to just sit back and enjoy the movie, but you can't help it, and But actually, I got to say, when we went to the premiere, I had a good friend of mine, Tryon, who was sitting next to me, and he said, obviously made some comments about the music beforehand. Said I'm going to be listening to it, and then afterwards, he's just like, you know what? Sometimes I didn't even notice the music,
Mhm.
which actually I took as a great compliment because that's what I wanted. It's not about drawing attention to the music. So even for myself, I there are times when I'm watching it back and seeing it there where I'm not even focused on the music and I got drawn back into the picture again. So there, I think it flitters and flutters. I think there are times when yes, you're conscious of, oh, is there a different way I could have approached it or anything? But actually, I was very happy with the results and received a lot of compliments along the way as well.
Definitely. And as you're watching it, in a big screen in a huge room with a bunch of people, does is there a different hit from your composition to you, or do you still feel like when you're composing in a room but on your own?
No, it is a different film, and when you're watching it with the audience, you're feeding off of their experience, and you're seeing if they've caught all the little nuances, all the hits and the emotions that you wanted to capture, and it was actually really fun. I've seen it I think 3 times on the big screen now, just with test screenings, and then and then the premiere, and actually the premiere, the theater was absolutely packed out, and just listening to the audience response was really rewarding.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on this project. It is fantastic watch. It has a very amazing soundtrack to it. So, thank you very much for your time and congratulations once again.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me to be part of this.